Hey everybody, how's your Saturday doing? Oh hey, I got some MIDI info up here. Yes, I would like to save those changes. There we go. MIDI taken care of. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Pseudo? How you doing, Rage?
Doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good when I've got my audio working.
Yeah, audio's a thing in Windows.
Boy, is it. Especially when your interface just decides it doesn't really want to do interfacey stuff anymore.
Wait, I'm an interface? What are you talking about, interface? Gaming peripherals? What are we talking about, gaming peripherals?
If I may, don't buy one of these. This is a Zoom UAC2. I've had nothing but problems with it. Don't buy it.
Get yourself a Steinberg UR22C. That's what I have, and I have had nothing but wonderful experiences with it.
Yeah, I am now back to my Mark of the Unicorn interface, which actually is quite nice. I could just never get it working under Linux.
You're in Windows right now?
Yep.
Sorry to hear that. I am too.
It's with the WSL, and we are going down the rabbit hole here, by the way. With WSL, it's actually not too bad. I don't mind it for development work.
There we go. Much better. Hey, Lo, hey, Rift, hey, Board, hey, everybody. How's the viewers doing today? Everybody excited to talk about games? So...
Oh, yes.
I'm pretty sure every single person that views this will know somebody that this can apply to. A mother, a sister, brother, friend, father. Somewhere you know somebody that's losing their fucking mind with boredom and thinks they can't do video games. And they can.
State of affairs.
And they can. Trust me, they can. Every time somebody comes up, oh, I can't play video games. I've heard, I'm not smart enough, and I don't have fast enough reaction, and I can't follow what's happening. Like, there's a game out there for you. Guarantee you there is a game out there for you. You just need to spend that much time playing a few of them and find out what you like. That's it. And some people need a little help. So, what's blocking people from picking up a game? I want to hear from the chat too, but what do you guys really think? What do you hear from other people? And if you're one of the people who doesn't want to pick up other games, what's stopping you from grabbing a game? What's your actual block? Now let's hear some ideas from Pseudo and Rage as well.
Sure. For me, it's usually just like a bit of a fear of the unknown kind of boils into it. And giving myself a few games that I haven't even really touched because I already just discounted as like, oh, I'm not going to like this because of previous experiences I've had with similar things or even genres I've never touched before. And a similar thing was like even the Dark Souls and like Sekiro games. Like I've never really played them because they kind of have a reputation of being difficult and frustrating. And that's usually two things I don't want when I'm playing a lot of the games. But they can't really explain to you how kind of satisfying and like kind of like how much the hook will actually pull you in until you actually try it. So for the longest time, I just kind of didn't want to do that, and then I finally started trying it. Oh, this is kind of great. It is frustrating, but it definitely balances out with how rewarding it is.
Well, let's actually touch on the frustration part for a little bit. Okay, that's a great one, and that's something that if a lot of people pick up a game for a short amount of time and get frustrated with it, no matter what game it is, and put it down. And this, I think, is an interesting topic to start with because it's not a problem with the game, it's a change in how you're thinking about the game. So the people that have been following and hanging out with me have seen me play a few games now, and when I die, I might, yell a little bit at the game to blow off a little bit of steam and entertain you guys, because most people find it funny. That's an honest reason of why I yell at the game sometimes. Sometimes I'll do it by myself. I mean, most of what you see me do, I do when I'm by myself as well. All of the talking, all of the taunting things on the screen, that's just how I play games. Keeps me light. When I die, I laugh. Even when it was like a frustrating trial in God of War, I was still laughing between the attempts. It's important.
I have been there when he is playing video games, not on stream. The behavior is exactly the same. It's identical.
Yep. And that's why I want to talk a bit about the frustration side, because if people are properly prepared for it, it's not as frustrating. You know, people have this mindset of dying in a game is bad and you should never die in the game, and especially people that haven't played it before coming in and thinking, "Oh, I should never die in this." No, you're supposed to die. It's a standard. It's what you should expect. My favorite example. Go ahead, Rage. I see you prepping.
I was just about to say it very much used to be a standard, but it's getting to be less and less of one as time goes by. Games are getting to be more, curated, more of an experience than a challenge. And that's fine. Like if you want that, that's totally fine. But it's also sort of denormalized the experience of, what we probably had when we were younger of, oh man, I can't beat this level. I can't do it. I can't beat it. I got to keep trying and trying and trying and trying.
Yeah, it's a very different mentality about gaming today than it was before. Games used to be made long by making them so hard you can't beat them quickly. That was how you made a game longer, because you only had 128 kilobytes of memory to work with. You couldn't just tack on a new chapter to the end of the game and make it longer. You're just, well, let's tune this boss a little tighter and just kill the player for a couple extra weeks.
Also, coming from the arcade culture, they wanted the game to be difficult to take your quarters.
Yeah, quarter pumpers. Quarter pumpers was a legitimate thing. There's a lot of them, but the first one that comes to my mind is Dragon's Lair.
They're making a movie. They're making a Dragon's Lair movie, which is wild, with Ryan Reynolds.
I'll watch that. Hell yeah. I like Ryan Reynolds.
Sure. I'll watch that. That'd be good.
But yeah, so let's talk about the frustrating thing, because my favorite example of it, and it's also a favorite of mine because I get to tell you the story about sticking my foot in my own mouth. And I love telling stories about myself fucking up. Those are my favorite ones. So I'm sitting here. I just got Pookie into gaming, right? She had played one action game in her entire gaming career, Ni no Kuni 2. I had played it. Most of the battles were spam one button and you win. You don't even have to move. Just hit that button and you'll win. It wasn't a complicated. There was like items and spells and other complicated stuff to understand, which she had built up to, and we'll get into a nice paths for different things. But the frustration side of it, I look over and she's at the character creation menu in Bloodborne. It's like, that's a bold choice.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. And I looked at that and my first reaction was, you're probably going to spend longer on the character creation screen than playing the game, because she was going through every single option carefully and looking at every single setting and tweaking and perfecting her character as much as possible. I thought she was going to get in there and die and die and die and then be like, you know what, I'm done. Like most people do. But she knew Bloodborne was difficult because of Rage and I always talking about it. She knew that she was probably going to die a lot. So when she started dying a lot, it was par for the course, right? She wasn't super frustrated because she went into it expecting this experience. So the frustration should really start being looked at as your anticipation of what you're going to play. If you come into a great difficult game, even if you're new, if you accept that it's going to be difficult, you'll still be able to learn it and play it. We'll talk more on that again later when we start talking about difficulty in controls, because they're the simplest.
Different types of difficulties that can be applied to games in general.
Yeah.
Which is something that I'd like to touch on today.
Yeah. Lo also said nervousness, and I put it down, but I removed it because I wanted to ask you, Lo, nervous about what? Let's get more specific. We can drill that down.
we can take a stab at what low might mean.
Yeah.
But it would be much easier to just have low tell us what he means.
Yeah. So, a lack of knowledge is something I hear a lot of for people getting into games. Like, it's very, very intimidating to say, walk into an MMO and just try to start playing it. Hey, Alex Gamer, I'm very good. How are you? Welcome. I'd love to hear your perspective on some of this too. On trying a different game style, or just nervous about feeling I'm going to suck at this, but it's all mental, and yes, a lack of knowledge as well. Go along with it. Yeah. Like the MMO example, MMOs aren't hard games to play. Mechanically, the controls themselves are pretty easy, and you've got a long span of time between button presses to sort of think of things and do things. They're a knowledge game. And you walk in and you're like, oh my god, there are 5 million different tabs on my UI, and I have 30 different currencies, and I have no idea what any of this does, and I'm done. That's it.
Which is more or less my experience with MMOs.
Yeah, they can be a difficult one. You gotta pace, slowly consume them. Some of them throw too much at you right away. Bad design. Bad design. Motor skill deficiency. And that's not to say you have a physical handicap or anything like that. You might just have never held a controller before. And I do remember the early days of when I first started gaming still and had to look at the controller once in a while to find buttons. And I remember there came a point where my mother would come by as I'm gaming, and I'd be under a blanket with my hands under the blanket and just hitting the buttons on the controller. And she's like, how do you know what you're hitting? I'm like, I've hit them enough. I know where that button is. Yeah, I've pressed B 3,000 times yesterday. I can find it. Oh, hey, Frenum with the raid. Welcome, Frenum viewers. I hope that this can be helpful to you. Come in, sit, join in the conversation. We're talking about helping beginners get into games. All right, the whole world is locked inside right now, right? We're all stuck indoors. I was just saying, every single one of us has a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, someone close to them that doesn't play games and is bored as hell and has some lame excuse for why they don't want to play or why they can't play games. So we're working on right now the excuses we've heard from other people. Right? I don't know enough. It's too frustrating. Some people just have random excuses because they're afraid of doing something they've never done before. And right now, I was just talking about motor skills. I've known some people that say, I can't play games because my fingers don't work that fast. Kids, wife, yeah, exactly. I've heard like, my fingers, they don't respond that well, and I can't do the fast, and it's too quick, and so I've heard the motor skill side.
It's definitely like learning how to drive. So you're not used to that, but then instead of, taking it easy, a lot of the time you hop in a game and it's like, all right, well, you should know how to, fully drive, and we're going to make you go on a highway full speed with a bunch of obstacles in the way. So it is kind of understanding that, all of a sudden a quick time event pops up and it's like, all right, push A, and then the player doesn't know how to do that. They don't even know what A is, and then next thing you know, they die. So it is kind of, you can see the frustration from it. And a lot of things we're trying to talk about now is like, okay, well, let's say that analogy is a bit closer. It is kind of like learning how to drive. Well, let's try to find some scenarios in some ways that you can kind of show them the controller, teach them how things are before kind of just throwing them into the deep end, and all of a sudden they are overwhelmed.
Yeah. So
the modern gaming problem that is press X.
Yep.
It's on a different spot on every controller.
Well, only one controller has X, the other one has cross, right?
No, two controllers have X.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, Rage's voice did just get quite low. You're right, Pookie. He's about to throw his interface out the window. I can see it in his eyes.
Oh yes.
There it is. That's much better. I don't know what you did or if you did anything, but that was much better. Okay. So for the frustrating, we talked a little bit about looking at it as a mentality towards the game. So you won't be frustrated if you accept that it might be a difficult game for difficulty, but then we could also, or let's not talk about difficulty, let's really look at it as forgiving. Because it's not that the difficulty is high, it's that it's unforgiving that creates most of the frustration. If it's very forgiving, that will naturally bring the difficulty down, but I think it's the bigger thing. But let's do some game examples under the frustrating side. So if they wanted just something that was, see, the frustrating side is hard to do. Let's avoid that one because it depends why it's frustrating. Right?
It could be frustrating for a variety of different reasons.
The lack of skill, lack of knowledge could be creating the frustration. The motor skill challenge could be creating the frustration. So what do you guys want? Do you guys want to do some examples of games to help with these, or do you have specific things you want to get into first? I know you had some topics you wanted to talk about. Fear of embarrassment. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll build that list of reasons why people will be hesitant to play or issues they'll run into if they just try playing it. And then we can pull up some games that kind of help.
Sure. Yeah, instead of building on these right now, then I'll let you guys go on your topics and I'll keep building my lists here.
Sure. One of the things that I really wanted to touch on was game preference. Like, we as a community of us streamers are very, very into games that challenge us for different reasons. You know, I really, really enjoy the new Doom games. I feel like they're a great reflex test. They're a great way to just sort of lose myself in the shooter trance and just go to town on it. But not everybody may like that, you know? We're all fans of Sekiro. Not everybody may like what is essentially a rhythm game. Like, that's not necessarily for everybody.
The Guitar Hero that murders you when you miss a note.
It's true. It's basically a rhythm game. But like, that being said, we have a Switch, and Nariel has absolutely loved playing through a variety of games on the Switch that are just a little bit more accessible. They're easier to get into. They're not necessarily as violent, which I think is a big part of it as well.
Yes, I know that attracted Pookie a great deal to the Switch as well.
So like, let's just talk about some things that we like in games and how those can be represented in different ways and sort of like brought to the table in a more accessible way.
So I love puzzles in games. I love things that make me think, that I have to stop and stare at and work something out in my head. That I love it. I love it. Not trials, puzzles.
Not a timing trial with pushing a box around while some spikes pop out of the floor.
Yeah, I like it even less with like 500 milliseconds latency. I bet you I would have made that box a few times if I didn't have like a half-second lag.
Easily.
The entertainments. So what do you guys all like in games? Low, I know, just recently got back in, so I'm very curious to know what he got in. And Pookie is a recent gamer, period. So I'm very curious to hear what she has to say about game preference.
Board says, I remember the struggle of learning to play games on a keyboard and needing to memorize like 20 keys to play a game. Yeah, that's real. Compared to a relatively simple controller, that is definitely a real thing.
That's another thing to think of, is when we started playing, for a lot of us, like me, it was NES era. I had A, B, and a D-pad. That's it. That's pretty easy to wrap your mind around. Yeah, pretty easy to wrap your mind around. Now we have, 4 face buttons typically, 2 bumpers, 2 shoulder buttons, 2 analog sticks, a D-pad. It gets overwhelming, and I get that. I hear that from Pookie a lot, and I have that complaint in games myself. The controls, they just make them so complicated. Even a veteran gamer that's been gaming my whole life, I'm like, oh, what was this one and what was that one? I'm like, I have to hold this button and push this one in and then spin this one counterclockwise while I hit this thing to do that. Okay, yeah, let's get this going here. Yeah, just give me a button.
You heard us say quite a few times when we were talking about Doom Eternal, there's a lot of buttons in that game. There's just a lot of them, and you got to get into that rotation or you're going to lose.
Yep.
Like, you're just going to lose immediately.
On that front, that's one of the things Pookie always brought up when she was getting into the FromSoft games. There's not a lot of buttons. It's very simple controls.
Yep.
There's not a lot of moves. There's not a lot of commands. You've got, 1 spell button if you decide to use it. You've got 2 attacks. You've got a block. A roll. It's very little to wrap your mind around, and then it's all about mastering the execution of those few buttons. And I frequently hear her say when she picked, what was the last one? Can't remember what the last game she got into was. But there was a lot of buttons. It's not a difficult game, definitely easier than Bloodborne. But she had a harder time getting into it because there were so many controls to learn.
Now I'm really curious as to which game that was.
Yeah, me too.
Pookie, which game was it? Tell us.
She's been playing a bunch of games lately. Strategy. I'm a big fan of turn-based for getting into games specifically. Something with a good story.
Oh, God of War, yeah.
Yes, the new God of War.
A bunch of buttons.
Combat is easier, but there's much more to the combat still. They just forgive you for your mistakes a lot more.
For some people, the mechanical challenge can be rewarding. Like, that's definitely something that I enjoy.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. Pseudo, I know, enjoys a mechanical challenge at times. Low is obviously loving his mechanical challenge because he's been completely engrossed. Game preference is FPS, but I'm starting to get into RPG and combat games. Excellent.
Another one for game preference would be goal-oriented and achievements. A lot of people I know kind of having that kind of satisfying loop of having something to work towards and then achieving it. It's huge with Animal Crossing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be goal and... Oh, it was Nier. Yeah. Nier Automata. Not Nier Automata. Nier is its own game. I call it Nier all the time as well.
I'm just not good at some kinds of games, as there are many types in the game. It's true. Nier Automata is actually 7 games mashed into one.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. Oh, I love that game.
Yeah, it was her first introduction to bullet hell as well as twin stick shooter, and it was quite a bit to just hey, you're in a twin stick, go. Meanwhile, I'm trying to be okay, you can actually do this, by the way. They didn't tell you, but because I've played a twin stick before, I understand that these are the controls and this is what you can do. Yeah. Nier Automata, probably the worst game for a beginner of gaming.
Yes. Well, maybe not the worst, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah.
Its story is still easily accessible. Its characters are still well written. But, mechanically, nah.
Yeah. Every time the game changes scene, it changes genre, it changes controls. What? The goal/achievement oriented also covers your stuff like Stardew Valley, which is actually how I got my mum started again on game. Well, Pookie got my mum started again on gaming and fully into it. My mum did play some games in the past. She would work on puzzles and RPGs with me, and on the TurboGrafx, she played a lot of Pac-Land, and she played some Fantasy Zone, which is actually a super difficult game for as childish and pretty as it is. But Yeah, it was farming. Farming is what did it for her, because she loves gardening.
I keep trying to get Nariel to play Stardew Valley as well. I think she'll really, really love it.
Yeah, it'll suck her right in at the beginning. My mom's done with it. She's done everything there is in the game multiple times and had a couple kids and married a couple different people and stuff like that. So she's moved on to Pumpkin Days now. She's been playing. But she's rated to the Steam now. She's surfing all the indies on Steam and checking out what people are doing, and it can be done. Let's get more people into games.
So maybe now that we've got some things that we prefer to see in games, let's think about how we can represent those in an accessible way. Some games that are easier to get into that show off those things.
If you love to read, there are plenty of RPGs that are more text than game, or you could even try text-based RPGs. I recommend Planescape Torment, easy to learn, and it's heavy on story. Easy-ish to learn, but it is still a fair bit. There's a little bit of character building to it through the D20 or D&D system. There's spells, there's items, there's abilities, there's racials. There's still a fair bit of depth to that game to take into account that could be overwhelming to somebody new to gaming. Good game though.
However, if that person had been playing, say, pen and paper RPGs previously, there you go. There's your easy in.
Yeah. If they're a pen and paper player, then yeah. Planescape, Baldur's Gate 2, fantastic games for it. If they like making a whole party, which I do, Icewind Dale lets you make your whole party from the beginning. Still a fantastic game from the same people. Yeah, but again, based on the background information, they would need to understand those things. So, how do you want to sort accessible games?
Let's just go from the top of the list to the bottom of the list. Let's say games that are accessible that have a good amount of puzzles in them. People who like puzzles will probably enjoy these.
Sure. The first one that comes to my mind is Portal on the PC.
Yep, that was going to be one of the ones that I suggested as well.
Because there's no real failing. There's nobody killed, really, right?
No, it can be a bit frustrating. Portal, it would be good to start, but there is a bit of the whole. There's a lot that you'll have to learn to be able to kind of get used to it. Which luckily Portal starts off slow, but you definitely do die, and the puzzles definitely require some, reaction-based timing, and it can kind of get frustrating.
Is it a lot of reaction-based timing, or?
We are also talking about people who already enjoy puzzles. This is already something that they like. They want to be able to solve these puzzles. I hear what you're saying as far as like requiring a bit of mechanical skill to be able to complete some of those puzzles, but the tricky ones are generally later in the game, and I think it would still do a pretty good job at easing people into it.
Needing some level of skill isn't a bad thing either, because it's gonna get them more comfortable with the controls as they go, and it's gonna force them to get a little bit better with the control. That right, Pookie was playing The Witness. That was a very, very, very good game for puzzle fans. There's no dying, there's no anything. It's just wandering around, finding puzzles, and solving them.
Oh yeah, I remember. I've just pulled it up on my monitor here, and I remember watching Day 9 playing this and just being like, man, I need to show this to all of my puzzle game friends.
Yeah. Only 2 buttons to learn. Yeah, very, very simple controls, but it uses WASD to move around. It uses mouse look. Right? It can be used with a controller if you really, really want to, but WASD and mouse look is critical, and that's basically it. WASD and mouse look, and then 2 buttons. So you're not overwhelmed with controls, but you are genuinely stumped by the puzzles. It is a thorough puzzle game. Portal as well. There's not a ton of it. It does get a little bit more intricate towards the end, but most of it is figuring out physics puzzles. That's the core of the game. Then just being able to fire left click or right click portals into specific spots is going to work on your ability to use your mouse. It's going to improve your mousing. See previous FPS videos for tips on improving your mousing specifically to that.
Yeah, it's something we talk about quite a bit.
Yeah.
Another game that I want to throw onto this list because I absolutely love this little game is World of Goo.
Oh, that's a great game.
World of Goo, go play World of Goo.
It's on our giveaway list.
Super easy to get into, entirely mouse driven, and it's just wonderful to play. Great little puzzles in there.
That's one of the very first games I got Pookie playing, way before she ever actually picked up a controller to start playing games.
We should include the classic Tetris, because I think it's a really good puzzle game to get a lot of people into it. It's very, very kind of basic at first, and the difficulty is easy because you just kind of, the pieces go slow and they have time to adjust to it. And I think that was what got a lot of people into gaming, especially when it came out around like the arcade cabinets. And even like nowadays, a lot of people pick it up, and it's just like basically one button for most people and like a directional pad, and that's all you really need. It's a nice kind of initial basis of getting used to how these things work.
Big agree.
So I'm not sure, I don't think it goes under puzzle game. I'm not sure where I would put this, but I've been playing them recently to help keep and sharpen my own reflexes. And as I was doing it, I was like, this is a great way to get a large portion of the older generation that's not into the digital video games so much into it. I've been playing a lot of digital pinball.
I would say that that's probably more under mechanical challenge games.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. But I'm not sure what else would go under there. But we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We're probably good for puzzles for now. We can always come back and add a bit to these.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, honestly, just The Witness on that list probably makes the list perfect. It really was that good of a puzzle game for people new to games. It really was.
And World of Goo.
Yeah.
Those two.
Yeah. I mean, World of Goo is a great one as well, but The Witness could complete the list by itself. There's that much to it. Pookie got through it, and she was like, I completed like 30% of the puzzles. There's a ton of stuff in that game hidden. So we'll go to strategy games.
Strategery.
And I'm gonna
not my area of expertise, so I will defer to you two on this one.
Yeah, over 500 puzzles in that game. So I'm gonna put the strategy game that got me into strategy games and got me started on them when I was 10 or something like that, is when I picked up the game and started playing it. So you got no excuses. If a 10-year-old can play it, you can goddamn play the game. And that's Shining Force. It is one of the greatest games on the Genesis, period, which means it's emulated. It's on a dozen different legal emulation systems if you really, really feel strongly about paying for it. If you don't, it's a Genesis ROM. It's not hard to get. It's not hard to find. Anybody with half a level of tech can definitely do it for the person if they don't know how to do it themselves. But it's just a simple game. Every single unit can carry 4 things. The only equipment is weapons. Each unit can have 1 weapon. Eventually you'll get the theories of spells and items and stuff like this. If that's too much for you, strategy is too high to start. But we can talk about simpler.
For a simpler strategy game, which has got a lot of kids into it, but it's not really just for kids, is Plants vs. Zombies. It's a really good kind of basic, casual strategy game.
Yeah, that's a good, very, very casual one.
Another good kind of strategy games, which are nice to kind of pull people into video games, are actually like virtual board games. Like you can get like Monopoly, Game of Life, all that kind of stuff, and that kind of allows you to play with a few people maybe that don't traditionally play video games, kind of gets their feet wet a little bit. Because unfortunately, especially with like the older generations, there was a bit of a kind of negative population towards people playing video games for the longest time. They were seen as something that like, they're lazy and all stuff. Like nowadays, it's like you can do anything, especially now with what's going on with like kind of like social distancing and isolation. I can still play board games with most of my friends, and even my family will kind of just, boot it up on the system, and it's still the same kind of rules that they're used to in person. But now instead of, rolling the dice, they're just kind of clicking on a button, and it kind of helps them build those kind of same skills that will translate to other kind of similar games.
Yeah, if they're playing it with a controller, at the end of the day, you've got a controller in your hands and you're pressing buttons. That's going to make you comfortable holding a controller and pressing the buttons. If you're pressing. Go ahead.
Before we go too deep into like getting into controllers, there's another strategy game that, while it's not my thing, I know that a lot of people love, and that's the Tycoon series.
Yes, those are fantastic.
I could see a lot of people that like business and stuff like that getting more into those, because it's all terms and ideas they already get and understand. They don't need to learn what net income is and gross income and taxation rates and charges and all the maths that are involved in doing the different tycoon stuff. That's all real world reference. That's difficult for a kid, maybe. That doesn't work.
Most of those games have like a sandbox mode, though. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon is very popular with kids, and most of the time they don't play the campaign. They're just like, I want infinite money, and I just want to build things. These games are fantastic for that, because they build either, if it's on a console, there's a controller, but even on PC, you're getting used to, just clicking around, pushing buttons, learning hotkeys, or just general hardware familiarity.
I've heard quite a few different parents of kids that I know get into Minecraft and start playing it. One of the recent ones was, she said that her son wanted her to play Minecraft, so she sat down and started playing it with him and looked over, and 3 hours had passed and he was no longer in the room with her.
Seems legit. Another just one more for the strategy.
Yep.
Is the Theme Hospital and 2 Point Hospital, those games. Also great little management games, a little less businessy, a little bit more fun fantasy.
Yeah, I was a big fan of them. They're a lot of fun. You can't really lose or fail. It's just thinking and strategy, planning, but mostly just relaxing and hilarious. Because the stuff you're curing is just ridiculous. Like the Picassoism, where they come in all abstract, and the machine actually like takes them apart and puts them back together so they look like a regular human again. Stuff like that. Hilarious.
The one that comes to my mind is, I forget what it's called, but it's the one where they've got a light bulb for a head. Mm-hmm. That one's always the first room that I think of in those hospital games. That's
one of the first rooms you actually get in that game. You unscrew their head and then you screw on a normal head. They walk out all happy. Sometimes it goes wrong and they die.
Slightly horrific.
But it's done in the most hilarious ways, because then you've got ghosts wandering around your hospital haunting patients. Yeah, good games. But I had to add the creative games one. If you think RPGs are too complicated, you can play any Bethesda game from 2006 until today. No, they're not, actually. They're really not. There's a lot to them.
They're terribly basic.
Are pretty, they can get kind of a bit overwhelming or complicated, because they're just kind of, you get lost and it's difficult to follow, especially Morrowind, which is just like, you talk to this guy, he's like, yeah, you need to go like 4 kilometers to the west and look for this weird cave thing and then grab an item, but all you have is about 200 text dialogue to figure that out, and it's just like, okay. Skyrim has been surprisingly easy for a lot of people to pick up. There's even that very popular Twitch streamer like Skyrim Grandma, I think she's called. And it's just like, it's hard to start at first, but I mean, I guess it's one of those things where there's something intriguing about the world for most new people to kind of just keep on and stick through learning the controls. So at least there's something there for some people.
That's how Pookie got into Bloodborne. The world was so intriguing and beautiful that she just wanted to keep exploring it. And the only way to explore it was to get good enough to kill these things. She beat the game multiple times, by the way.
Another great little creative game, Terraria. Going to be getting its final update this summer.
Yep. That's an interesting one. I had some other ideas. There's a lot on the creative game side. Like, yeah, it really, I guess the most important of all this is really looking at the background of the person themselves. You know, what are they already familiar with? So I'm going to quickly throw the RPG one on here as a good example. Story games. Because there's a lot that you really have to understand for an RPG, and we take a lot of it for granted. I was talking about this a little bit before we got online, but you know, if somebody's never ever played any of these fantasy games or RPGs or pen and papers or anything before, and you jump into it and you start saying, well, this is an item and this is a spell. What's the difference?
And I go,
Yeah, like we get it. Spells are owned by a person, items are owned by the party, right? And anybody can use an item, but you have to know how to use the spell. Seems simple enough to us, but there's definitely a learning spike there to get over. And then understanding, you know, the different benefits of different weapons and elements and armor and what everything does. It is overwhelming to a lot of people, and the game that I continuously put in front of people to help get over these basic items in a super simple way that isn't mind-numbing, because you do still have to think a little bit about the combat, is Mystic Quest. A fantastic SNES game. A fantastic place to start. And I believe from there we went Chrono Trigger.
One of those games that introduced the West to a JRPG.
Yep, that's literally what it was made for. It came out right after Final Fantasy II as a Western-only release, Final Fantasy IV in Japan, because when they nerfed the hell out of Final Fantasy IV to make Final Fantasy II here simpler and easier for us simple Western people that didn't know how to play their complicated Japanese games, we bitched and complained that it was way too hard. And nobody got it. And they were like, we already made it easier. What do we do? So they made Mystic Quest. Turns out, on point. Squaresoft knew what the fuck they were doing, and that game is perfect for learning how to play an RPG. Spells are simple. There's no MP. HP is standard. Your spells are done by cast. You don't have to calculate MP, and like I can cast this spell 5 times and this spell twice, and I have this much left, and it's just I can cast this spell 4 times and this spell 4 times and this spell 4 times and this spell 4 times. Cast one of them once, I can cast that one 3 times and the rest still 4 times. Super simple math. Super simple. You don't equip weapons. You don't equip armor. The only thing you do is you choose which weapon you use, because you have multiple types of weapons. So you have to choose what you're attacking with. As soon as you get armor, shield, stuff like that, it automatically equips it. Your stats just go up as you find it. There's no inventory management for your gear or anything like that. Every piece is just better than the last. I don't know what else to say. I love the game. I've finished it multiple times. It's just great.
It's very simplified, but it's a very good game.
Speaking of simplified, I think Pokemon is a really good kind of initial turn-based kind of RPG style game for people to kind of get their hands on and kind of get used to the whole world of what's going on, because it has the items and stuff like that, but you don't really need to use them.
Which one did you start with?
Just even like whatever the latest Pokemon game is, just they can just usually just play that. At least it's modern, because it can be kind of a barrier of entry if you tell someone to kind of play some retro games, especially if they're not super computer savvy. It'd be harder for them to find emulators or even find the actual hardware to play them on. If you just say, hey, like it's probably safe to say that Pokemon games going forward, and even the new ones that come out, they're all the same kind of style. Like it's very traditionally aimed at not too difficult, easy to pick up and play, but still like a very well polished game that is fun.
That's a fair point.
Including including the spin-offs as well. Like Pokemon Let's Go is something that Nariel has been playing a lot, and it's actually great. It's a great little game.
Yeah, right on. It's a good point on the...
She's now at the point of trying to complete everything there is to do in the game. And she's
Plat that.
doing it for about 3 months straight.
That's a good game. It's a sign of a good game, for sure. On that same note, I wanted to touch on the retro aspect. It can be a barrier for some people to get in, but it's a great place to start. It really is. It's simpler controls.
It helps if you can give them a piece of hardware. Like if you can give them a Game Boy that has, whatever Pokemon you want them to start on. If you can give that to them, they will have a much easier time getting into that than telling them, oh yeah, here's how you set up an emulator and you got to find these ROMs and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, if it's that side, I would be on their site or remote it in and set it up for them. And then you hand them the controller when it's all working. Like, here, now you can play. If it's going to be an emulator, that's really going to have to be how it starts, unless they're already an IT guy, already a computer guy, and know how to do that kind of stuff, at which point they've probably played at least Space Cadet Pinball a few thousand times in their life. I see the nods. Does anybody not know Space Cadet Pinball? Actually, that's an interesting point that this makes me think of. Here's Space Cadet Pinball. This is the old Windows game. You played the shit out of that, Halo? Yeah, everybody played this some. A great puzzle game to start people with that's super easy for anyone to access. And it's going to make you way better with your mouse. No internet, this was the thing. Yeah, that and Minesweeper. Yep, see, that's why I just put Minesweeper on there, because Space Cadet Pinball made me think, Minesweeper. Hey, Space Cadet Pinball is my childhood. Yep, good times. I mean, I predated it a little bit. It was my teenage years, but I still played the shit out of it. It and Minesweeper.
Solitaire still comes on computers, apparently.
It does.
Actually,
It does.
Solitaire,
My taskbar.
the reason why they actually have Solitaire on like Windows operating system was to teach the user how to use the mouse. That was the sole purpose of putting it on, was, hey, we'll put this very easy to use mouse only game, and this is how we'll get people to teach themselves how to actually use our software.
Yep, and Minesweeper was there to teach you the difference between right and left click.
It also gets you real accurate at moving your mouse around. I got schoolwork done early so I can catch up on snatch up a computer to play it. Yep. At school, I remember those days. For us, it was racing to the 5.5-inch floppy disk box of games so that you can be the one that gets one of the Oregon Trail discs. If you failed to get Oregon Trail, you damn well better pray that there was still a number muncher left. That was my growing up with games. And then at home I had a Socrates, or Socrates. It was like coloring games and basic math number games and design games and educational. What do we have for educational games? Not a lot. Oh, you know what a interesting game to throw on the list is?
Math Blaster.
I was actually going to say Typing of the Dead.
Oh yeah, Typing of the Dead.
Yeah, I was going to put that under the mechanical challenge.
Let's go ahead and add mechanical challenge then. I also wanted to put on the FromSoft games. And a lot of people are going to be like, you shouldn't introduce people to those games, and I used to agree with you.
Up until Pookie kicked all of our asses and beat all of them.
Pretty much. She hasn't done 2 and 3 yet, but yeah.
That's fine. She can avoid those ones.
Yeah, she did Dark Souls 1, she did Bloodborne, and she did Sekiro, and I am super proud and amazed by that. And after she did it, she comes around and tells me that while they're unforgiving, they're not necessarily that hard because the controls are simple. You just have to get really, really good with your simple controls. You're not trying to remember 1,000 buttons, you're remembering 4 buttons, but you have to hit those buttons at the right time. Period. I always went for the Sega Classics disc at Computer Club. We didn't have anything like that. I don't even know if Sega was a thing at that point.
Much more modern.
I'm happy you recommended them to me. I'm glad you're enjoying them so much, Lo. You had that background coming into it, but absolutely, I'm glad you're into them. FPS games, Twitch shooters are definitely in the mechanical challenge.
Yeah, and while a lot of people will play them at a very high level, and that in and of itself is very challenging and complex, and you need to know a lot about the game, at the end of the day, you just click on things.
Yeah, the actual controls to so what's a good shooter to start with? Let's not just put what would you, somebody's new to gaming, they want to play a shooter, they like the reaction speed and time, but they're new to gaming, so it can't be too demanding on the reaction speed and time, and we don't want to have 1,000,001 buttons to swap between modes and weapons and attacks. Like, Eternal's not a good idea.
2016.
Portal's actually good for that. It teaches you basic FPS kind of mechanics.
Yeah, it does incorporate the puzzles as well. They might not want puzzles, but I do agree Portal can go in. 2016 still had quite a few buttons, didn't it? It had less. I know it had less than Eternal.
It gave you enough health, armor, and ammo that you never actually had to switch your weapons. I played that entire game with first the assault rifle, and then as soon as I got the super shotgun, nothing but the super shotgun.
A lot of Valve games are actually good, like Half-Life and Left 4 Dead, because they're very straightforward, just kind of FPS games.
Left 4 Dead would be fantastic.
Okay, I'll put Left 4 Dead on. You guys seem to agree on that one. This is not my world. Man, I need you guys for this one. The shooter side. Halo's a great game. Not necessarily great. I guess maybe not after the last time we played it. It didn't age so well.
It's very much a product of its time.
Yeah, it's another God of War.
Halo 2 is good. I'm excited for Halo 2.
But yeah, I mean, Halo is a good choice. Halo 2. Let's put Halo 2 on. Because it started the 2-weapon system, so you only have a weapon swap. You don't have to remember, 24 different weapons to swap between all the time, and there's not a lot of special controls other than maybe getting into the vehicles, but you don't need to use them. You've got shoot, grenade, reload. Yeah. That sounds good.
Scrolling my Steam library now because this is more.
Yes. I'm thinking of what I've played for FPS. I mean, old ones immediately come to mind, like Duke 3D.
Borderlands can be a bit complicated, but I know it can still be played casually, especially at easier difficulties.
Borderlands, I think, would be a pretty decent one. Like, start on Borderlands 2 when they've really smoothed out the controls and the writing is really good, and you don't really have to pay all that much attention because most of the guns shoot things that blow up anyway.
I found, just my experience, that it was much better multiplayer. I didn't like it so much single player. I found it a little more punishing and unforgiving in single player.
It doesn't mean that they can't play it with them. I think a lot of these games are something that if someone's showing a new player, they're most likely would like to play it with them. So we should probably touch on a bunch of co-op games as well.
Yeah, I'd love to go into co-op.
How to kind of play someone and kind of teach them.
You're not always going to have somebody there to play with either.
That's what the internet is for, my friend.
Well, that could also be a barrier to entry as well. Like, I know getting Pookie into gaming, she was not interested in playing multiplayer at all at the beginning, unless it was local just with me, but the whole spinning up multiple games and connecting them together and meeting at a server, that was just a barrier to entry that was something that was necessary to get over.
you want a fairly simplistic, mechanically shooter, Killing Floor. Very simple. It requires more mechanical skill of you because it is actually quite difficult. But it's like basically just click on heads. That's all you're doing in that game.
It actually has a lot of kind of nice like sub mechanics for shooters in there too, such as like the sword layout. There's like the flamethrower layout, so you can kind of experiment around too. It'd be nice for newer players.
It has depth, but it doesn't force you to use it.
That's good. And then that allows them to, if they do get into it and enjoy it, expand more into the game and grow with the game, or have the game grow with them as they experience it.
Ooh, there's another one. Payday.
Never played it.
You guys didn't play the Payday games?
I love them. It's just Left 4 Dead but cops, which is kind of strange, but fun.
Left 4 Dead but cops, and with like at least a little bit of like, you're pulling off a heist. Look how cool this is.
It is very satisfying. And then half the time, like, all right, let's go for the stealth run, and then like 2 seconds in, someone forgets to not wear the mask inside, and then everyone's just aggroed. Humans Fall Flat. Humans Fall Flat and Gang Beasts are 2 games that are mechanical challenges that are very fun. Humans Fall Flat is the casual kind of audience, and then Gang Beasts is more of the like playing with a bunch of friends, kind of a bit more intense, but still very fun, very basic controls.
Are they going to be? They're going to be more like side scroller /
Humans Fall Flat, for the people who haven't seen it, you basically just control like a Ragdoll-like character. The left trigger controls the left arm, the right trigger controls the right arm. Your arms point up to wherever the camera is, and you just when you hold those triggers, you just grab and hold things, and it's just like a physics puzzle platformer. It's 3D. It's split screen. It's also like online co-op multiplayer. There's a bunch of maps, and I play it with my friends still, even with like people with like great computer knowledge, like a controller knowledge. Like it's just so basic and fun. You have jump, and you have like left trigger, right trigger, and that's it. And it's so much fun just to kind of like run around and try and solve these puzzles and just play around with things. It's a good way to kind of learn a controller. Gang Beasts is like that, but it's like a multiplayer kind of beat 'em up where you're kind of just trying to throw each other off platforms. But Humans Fall Flat, I highly recommend, especially if you're getting like a friend or a partner into games, is a very, very good way to do that.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like a good way to hold a controller, basically.
Yep.
Time spent holding a controller. I say this all the time to people that are like, I'm no good at games. You're so much better at games than me. I've held a controller a lot more than you.
Have you tried it? Have you practiced?
Yeah.
We practiced a lot. Like a lot.
Yep. The more you play, the better you get. That's the crux of it. I've added Stardew Valley and Animal Planet to creative games. Animal Planet is pulling lots of people into gaming that have never done it before, which is wonderful and a perfect time for it. I'm so glad that game came out when it did, except for the fact that you can't get a Switch anywhere right now because of it.
Animal Crossing?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
There's a game called Animal Planet.
There is another game called Animal Planet, I remember. It's a totally different game. Not nearly the same game, or recommended. The story games, I did want to expand a bit. I also put her in front of Chrono Trigger, which I've put on there, which is easy, simple, endearing. That was my path for Boogie. She was like, teach me how to play RPGs. I want to be able to play them. So I said, okay, here's Mystic Quest. This will give you your basics. You're going to understand weapons and armor and spells and items. She got through that and enjoyed it. I was like, okay, now here's Chrono Trigger. This is going to make you fall in love with games.
And it did.
Chrono
Trigger is wonderful. That is an amazing, amazing game.
One of the greatest stories I've ever experienced, and you have to experience it. It's not something that could be done in a movie. It's not something that could be done in a book. It's thoroughly an interactive experience and so good. Wonderful. Recommend it. You have to do it. If you haven't played games, play Chrono Trigger. If you have played games but you haven't played Chrono Trigger, play Chrono Trigger. And if you've already played Chrono Trigger, play Chrono Trigger again. That's my recommendation.
If my SNES Mini or SNES Classic or whatever the heck those things are called wasn't already packed up, I'd be playing it again now.
And story. I mean, there's so many good, simple RPGs out there. The beautiful thing about RPGs is they're turn-based. So this is going to be really good for the people that are saying, I am not good with a controller, because when it's time to put your input in, everything stops. And that was one of the selling points for Pookie.
Another thing to consider when talking about story games is the walking sim games. Basically, you get put into a situation and then told a story. Like if somebody's really into like dystopian sci-fi and questioning what humanity actually is, I would actually say Stanley's Parable is a terrible game to start somebody on. But something
it's
like
simple.
Soma.
It's only controls, right? Walking.
It's simple controls, but the actual game itself just has so many little, like, you need to know a lot about video games to get this game parts.
Oh, okay. I've never really gotten into it. I've only seen it.
Soma is a game where you only look around and walk and occasionally press the confirm button on things, but it's spooky. And it makes you question everything you know about, like, how human beings are who we are, and like, what is a soul, and how do our memories work? And it's a great game. Spooky as hell, though.
You know, on that same front, one that Pookie absolutely loved is simple, but difficult, charming, and just strange and weird and thought-provoking. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons?
Close.
Oh, also Earthbound. Yes, that is also true.
Yeah, and once Pookie got into that one, she just had a blast with it.
So this is more on story, but the Telltale series, most of those games are very good for beginners, and they're just story orientated. Some of them are a bit harder than others, but none of them are really too difficult. But the stories are usually very engaging. Like, there's some of them are kind of quick time heavy, but that's not always a bad thing. I mean, it can just, it doesn't. A lot of the times, the quick time events don't fail you. You just go down a different path.
I like that.
So then it's a good way for them to kind of, still be engaged in the story, and then they're motivated to be able to, be good enough to get the quick time events they want, so they don't, go down the path.
It creates replayability too, because I want to be able to go down the other path.
Or for games from developers that actually pay their employees, Griftlands.
Griftlands?
Yeah.
GRIFT lands?
Yep.
Never heard of them.
Oh, no, not Griftlands. I was thinking of it. Day 9 played it recently, and I got the name mixed up in my head. Let me just look at what he's been playing.
It's a...
Griftlands is a very different thing. Black Sad.
So another thing that comes to mind in story games / RPG to slowly get people into it, get used to the controls, is really any visual novel. If you can find stories that they're actually into, at least you're using controls, interacting in some way, getting used to pushing buttons, advancing, basic interactions. Yeah. Relaxing games as a category.
So what are you thinking is relaxing games then, Pookie?
Well, I know one buddy of mine that plays Red Dead Redemption 2 a lot to be relaxing. There's no real challenge. He can just wander around an immersive world. He likes Western and just do his thing, whatever he really feels like his thing is at that time. Might be a bit over the top, but try point and click adventures.
Yeah, the new King's Quest game. Actually quite good.
Where do you want me to put point and click? Under story RPG?
Yes.
New point and click games. Void Retro. They were the quarter pumpers of their day. Oh, you didn't click here, you died. Go again. Oh, you didn't click here, you died. Go again. Oh, you didn't click here, you died. That's the game.
Or like Zork, where if you run out of torch when you're in the tunnel, you just die. You're just dead now.
With a world, I can just roam or fly around and not worry about time or quests, etc. Yeah, that's where the Red Dead Redemption 2 came in for my one buddy that plays it for that, because it's easy. He doesn't like From games because he dies. He likes Red Dead Redemption 2 because he doesn't die. It's funny because that's why I don't like it. So that shows you gaming right there, right?
So do you think then that would include like the sim games, for instance, like
Absolutely.
Sim Farm or Sim or Trucker Sim or
The Sims?
that sort of stuff? Or The Sims, yes.
Yep.
The Sims.
Yep. Sim series. The Sims probably more than any under relaxing game. The rest of them probably more strategy.
I don't know if we'd put Red Dead under relaxing. Because it may be like casual and you don't die, but the actual like theme and gameplay behind it isn't really relaxing. It is definitely an action game.
That's definitely the number one reason I've heard the people that like it though.
I don't know. That's not what I got out of it. People I know, I know it's a very Grand Theft Auto heavy.
It's
where like
Grand Theft Horse.
well, it's not like dying isn't like common or anything like that. But like I know, what I'm just trying to say. I think people can kind of misinterpret it under relaxing games. You know, like games like Animal Crossing and The Sims, and the next thing you know, you're in a cowboy shootout, shooting people in the face, and they're blowing up, and people are dying all around you, and you're like, yeah, I'm so relaxed. Like,
but you got to look at what the game is before you just buy it and mindlessly play it. But the fact is, a lot of the people that I know, I ask them why they like it, and they're like, oh, it's easy to play. I can just sit down, play it, and run around and shoot some things and steal some horses.
I'm just saying it's just a thing. A distinction, like easy to play is probably a bit better, but I'm not even sure if it's really too easy to play. It's kind of like a bit of bias behind people who are used to playing GTA and then play that for the same kind of.
That's
I know
true.
how to do this,
it's more forgiving.
This is something that I tried to get our dad to play, and it is definitely difficult for people. It is definitely not relaxing if you're new to games. There's a lot going on with a lot of stuff you need to know. You have a whole little group of people that are nagging you to do stuff. If you're playing online, you have to deal with people nonstop tying you up in ropes and throwing you around and shooting you and briefing you. So it's I think relaxing for experienced people, but definitely not for beginners.
Meanwhile, I put him into Bloodborne on one of his first days ever really holding a controller on modern controllers, and had him running around in the first area and clearing out little zones and taking out Cindy's, and even pulled off some parries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a bit more straightforward. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into those games that we're overlooking. Like you have to know how to mount vehicles and drive vehicles, which are now horses, which have a completely different control than just the character. You have a huge inventory. They have to swap between them on the fly, and it's one of those things that we have a bad habit of just like already knowing those information. So it seems like it's easy for us, but a lot of these games have a lot of layers into that.
Yeah, I've never actually played Red Dead Redemption 2 at all. Like, even for a second. So I'm just going by what the other people I know that don't play a lot of games and or don't play high levels of games have told me.
I think a lot of Choose 3 or Match 3 games can fit under kind of puzzle or relaxing. I know my girlfriend enjoys them a lot. She plays a lot of Bejeweled, and it's still a game. Like it's some people like that. I can see it's fun.
Yeah, it's a good way to pass some time. A little more casual amount of time, but definitely a good way to pass some time. Bejeweled and Candy Crush.
We should probably throw Slay the Spire in there as well.
There's quite a bit to that game still, though. The whole concept of learning how to deck build and...
Sure, but that's not foreign to board games. Like,
I guess that's true.
Is a deck building game.
Deck building.
One of the things that drew me to Slay the Spire in the first place is that it is fairly simple to get into.
Yep.
You have this set of cards. You can play a fixed amount of them per turn. Now go try and get to the end.
The big thing with that is there's not a lot of upfront decision. You don't make your deck at the beginning or anything. You choose your character. That's it. At the beginning, you don't even really choose your character because there's only one. So it's just, here's your starting deck. This is how you learn. And the more you play it, the more it adds to it. So yeah, I agree it is. But there is still quite a bit of foreknowledge of attack and defense and cards and building. So definitely somebody that's already into games and maybe not so much into the digital side of games.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like somebody who's into the modern era of board games where they're starting to introduce different mechanics rather than just a dice roll and moving around a board, then it can be a much easier transition.
Or Magic players. But there's also MTG Online for them. MTG Online is a little more complicated and a bit much to get into, especially if you're not good with card games. But if you're already familiar with Magic, it's not that big of a jump. Play FTL if you want a nice, relaxing game.
Totally.
Lobsokek. Yeah, but Ben Prunty, though, his music is amazing.
For FTL, you mean?
The soundtrack. Yeah, he did the soundtrack for FTL. He did the soundtrack for Into the Breach, and they're both fantastic.
Yes, FTL is one of my favorite little burn time games. Still never beat it. Though somebody gave me the tip, the secret to finishing the game. Have you ever actually killed the last enemy, the last ship, or does it always kill you?
Honestly, I've never played a run of the game in my life. I just bought it.
Oh man,
and I watched a bunch of it.
The game's so good. But the trick to beating the last ship, if you haven't done it before, leave one person alive. Don't kill the entire crew. That's what killed me the last time, killing the whole crew. If you leave one person alive, the auto AI for the ship doesn't kick in. They've just got one person running around trying to execute all the things on the ship. If you kill all of the crew, the AI takes over and all the parts of the ship are active at the same time. It's really bad. It's like really, really bad. So some other games that I'm thinking on the relaxing, let's add Stardew. Definitely here. And ones that my mom grew into from there are, which is a more 3D one. It's basically 3D Stardew Valley, essentially. So it gets you used to using the camera in 3D controls and stuff like that, but it's still very easy to consume. And since she's ranting and raving and loves it, I've got to put Pumpkin Days on there for my mom, because she loves that game. That's what her jam is. If she can pick it up and start playing it, just about anyone can. RuneScape Overture is another fun, simple card game. Can't say I've ever played it.
RuneScape, yeah, I've played a lot. It's a good way to get people into MMOs.
RuneScape Overture, card game? Or RuneScape? You gotta read the whole message, not just the first word.
I actually think I've seen an Overture. Maybe there's I've never heard of that, but RuneScape itself is a good little kind of MMO that you can play with people.
Using poker hands to play attacks and spells. Interesting. So you'd have to be familiar with like poker, but then you could get more introduced to the theory of spells and attacks and stuff like that. Actually, that's a really nice little leap over that I'm going to add to puzzle games. If you're, you know people that are into the Bejeweled and the Candy Crush and that side and don't know the fantasy side so well, Rune Spell, there you go. Very different. Is Puzzle Quest. So it takes the Bejeweled, Candy Crush, Match 3 sort of thing, but you're matching swords and potions and shields to block damage and cause damage and trigger spells. So it begins to mix, you're not doing all the menu management and stuff like that. It keeps it in a really identifiable, understandable format, but then brings in some of those extra elements into the game.
Oh, TB did a video on it. Now I'm sad. TB.
I don't know who they are.
Total Biscuit? You don't know him from your WoW days?
Vaguely. By name. Reference. I wouldn't be able to say anything they ever did. I was far too busy in my WoW days to be paying attention to the internet. Do you know how much work it is running 2 40-man guilds?
I don't.
Nor do you ever want to. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Fielding 2 teams every week was time consuming. Time consuming to say the least. It was a job. However, we made everyone else jealous. You guys are breaking the game. You're just jealous that you don't have 2 teams to do what we're doing.
So I think our last category that we had in the initial list was like achievement and goal-driven games.
There'll be a fair bit of overlap in this, but
yeah, we've already had overlap.
Achievement and goal-driven definitely Stardew and Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing. I'm also going to put Factorio on here. I keep on recommending that to more and more and more people. You can turn off.
I'm not sure that Factorio is a good one for getting people into games, though. It is insanely complex.
Depends what you're into. It's complex. It's complex, but it's not gaming complex. It's real world complex. So if it's somebody that likes, building things and is into that kind of stuff and understands real world processes, Factorio could be right up their alley, because you are taking raw crude and refining it into light oil and heavy oil and petroleum, and then actually splitting all these things into real things. It has a really, really, really good tutorial. Really good, even for an early release date, that goes right from the beginning to the end of everything in the game in a very nicely introduced package. I have been recommending it to people. Like, my uncle was really into electrical engineering when he was in high school when he was young, or post-secondary when he was young, and did his whole life doing construction and management of the construction side and overview, and likes building things. Sounds right up his alley.
Well, if we're going to include Factorio on this achievement / goal-driven games list, do we want to include Subnautica?
I think that has a lot more game control and whatnot aspect to it. I definitely had to game it a lot.
The same sort of theme to it.
It does, but the actual world that you're in is much more difficult to control and interact with. I mean, at the end of the day, you really could.
Factorio is a lot of shit for anybody to deal with.
Just the interface looks overwhelming. Yeah, the interface can be overwhelming, but at the same time, you've got the time to get used to it. It's not going to run away from you. Subnautica, well, I guess you can put it onto easier modes, so you don't need to eat and drink and anything like that. A Virus Named Tom is another fun little puzzle with co-op.
Actually, never heard of it.
Yeah, I agree. How a game looks can make a person go into it or stay out of it. We talked a bit about that from the beginning, but that's true of any game, right? Like Stardew Valley could be a turnoff to a lot of people, even though it's a great little game, just because it's pixel. Animal Crossing has the really cutesy cartoon look and could be a turnoff to people. So
yeah, you can say that, like, visual style is definitely a thing, but Factorio's UX is kind of garbage. Like, it's kind of really bad.
It's gotten a lot better recently.
Play the hell out of Factorio. I do. I want to play that game. I'm not buying it till it's done, but I want to play that game. It's kind of garbage for the UX.
It's gotten a lot better. It was much worse.
Yeah, I think our point is just that we still have that bias of like our different type of play styles where maybe it's not as big of a deal for us to, you know, power through bad UIs or UIs aren't familiar with, but we have to try to keep that in mind as well as new players. Like, a lot of people don't play games because they have tried at some point and they just got completely turned off. And we have to kind of make sure like we have enough options for people. Sure, some people have been more used to it, but we got to make sure to try to keep them in mind of like, yeah, we want to make sure that we'll try to find something, start them off really kind of low and slow and let them kind of build, like let them have some fun with something. And then once they start having that fun, they'll want more. And then from there, it kind of just, world is their oyster. They'll start expanding from anywhere.
So how did you feel about what I showed you of Autonauts?
Autonauts would be a good one, but it does get a bit, it can be, I can see it being very overwhelming because it is very kind of like logic gate based, and it might be kind of frustrating for some people, but I think there are, like I said, there are audiences for all this. I think for some people it definitely is something we should suggest, like, hey, you should get into this. But if it's like someone's first, like we should probably have the distinction of like games that people should try first versus games they should try when, you know, maybe it's your kid's been playing a bunch of stuff, you want to show them some kind of new genre, this is how you should introduce them. But I think for like maybe a first thing, they can get kind of overwhelmed and frustrated.
Fair enough. So let's start with
I would say
games to really start with first.
I would say Autonauts would be great after somebody's played like Minecraft for a while.
Yeah.
I think Minecraft is a really good game to start with.
But you still do have your whole 3D environment depth. There's still a fair bit to it.
Yeah, but it is just so simple. It is, especially if you put it on peaceful, it is, you just hold one button and click things. Like, they have to start somewhere, and I think that it's at least a good enough start. Where like Sandbox, I think, is a really good area for people to start in. So they're not pressured to try to, you know, meet some kind of goal or some level that maybe they won't meet right away. It's kind of just like, hey, what do you want to do? What kind of fun do you want to do? And it's something that you can play with someone. I think a good way to introduce someone to video games is to actually play with them. It's a lot harder for someone to kind of just pick something up on their own and just roll with it. It'd be a lot easier if you could say, for example, for Minecraft, you play together because it's got multiplayer support. Like, hey, let's play this together and see what it is. Like, oh, what do you want to build a farm? Do you want to build a house? Do you want to, you know, maybe go explore into caves or maybe try to beat it and stuff like that? So I think it's a good kind of vessel for you to figure out what kind of play style someone would like, because it kind of just, as a sandbox, has a lot of different kind of sub games inside of it.
Yeah, if you just want an environment to stick somebody in and let them go, that again is going to be overwhelming and or a turnoff to some people as well, because some people want that straight path, obvious goal. But I definitely put it into games to really start with first. Since you wanted that, we'll put in a real category. I've got The Witness in there. I've got Mystic Quest in there. I also want Stardew Valley.
Yeah, and Animal Crossing with that.
Seasons After Fall.
And just to pimp one of my favorite games again, World of Goo. Very simple, mouse driven, very easy to get into, great little puzzles.
I love World of Goo. I really do. So creative. I love the stick match head goos. They were hilarious.
I love that game.
Well, it's not in any specific order. It's just a list. You can put Animal Crossing before Stardew Valley in your head.
Another one that would be... I still think that Portal might not be a bad starting point. It might be like sort of leaning towards you probably should have played a game or two before this, but it teaches you mouse look, it teaches you WAS to move, it teaches you space to jump, it teaches you control to crouch, and it doesn't require a lot of mechanical skill, at least like fairly early on.
Even when it does start needing mechanical skill, it's not like it's constant high-speed adrenaline reaction or you're dead like Doom, right? It's you got to make a couple quick movements after the shot. You can line up the first shot, then you got to go click and then click and then click. But it's not like I've just entered a room and now I've got things flying at me, and if I don't jump over them and then slide and then turn and shoot and turn and shoot and turn and shoot and hit all these things in the head, I'm gonna die. That's a little more to... Most of those people are just going to walk into the room and then splat, and they're just meat chunks on the floor, and then they're like, why am I playing this?
Whereas I go, well, shit, let's try that again.
And you know what? If that's the mindset of people, we probably don't need to help them get into games.
I just need to put them in front of something that's good.
Yeah.
So I think we should cover games to avoid with beginners and people starting out first.
Yes, that's a good point.
And I think right off the bat, we should probably, try to discourage or avoid games that have timers. That is like the number one most frustrating thing for most people. There are a lot of fun games that do have them, but if you're starting out fresh and you're trying to learn, the game is going to have the assumption that you know how to play, and it's not going to compensate for that. So you're going to be running into that initial barrier. So those games can be pretty frustrating. Same with things with like a motivated progression, where like the game expects you to be at a certain part of the game. So like things where like there's not too much like RTS games can be bad for that. If you're like, even if you're playing against AI, there's kind of like internal times of like you should have this many units by then, you should have this kind of base set up then, and it can get kind of frustrating where all of a sudden everything's going good, but you don't meet those kind of underlying progression, and next thing you know the game just blows up in your face. And another thing to avoid, I'd say, is online competitive games. They are just way too toxic to play with new players. Even if someone's like well versed in games and they're branching to something new, it's usually best to try to avoid these. Or if you are going to play, play with a full team, or play with a bunch of people. Because I've had a few times, like a good example is like League of Legends. Like I had a lot of friends, even when I first started learning how to play League of Legends, like Dota style games were new to me. And I was playing with even people I knew, like my friends, and then all of a sudden they start kind of just raging at you in the chat, and it's like, okay, well, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't fun. But it can get a lot worse when they're strangers over the internet. We all know the internet's not really a fantastic place. Best to kind of avoid these kind of games. Example, like LoL, Dota, CS:GO, Overwatch. At least for like until they're.
Sorry, Pseudo.
You got really quiet in rage, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna say at least at the start, until they're more familiar with controls, and they can kind of just learn the game rather than learning how to play games with this game.
Yeah,
I was just going to add that mostly online play should be avoided in general. Even online cooperative games like Warframe, what used to be one of my favorite games to play, but I got out of it for a while, and then trying to get back in again, everybody already knew things, so they would fly through the levels as fast as humanly possible, and I'm just like, what?
Yep.
What happened?
That's pretty much the experience. Yeah, I don't recommend random online gaming. If you're going to online game, do it with a friend in a closed environment. People you know. But ideally, if you want the person to get into gaming and you're using online gaming, it should be you and them in the game, and that's it. To let them explore and learn at their own pace. And if you're an experienced gamer and you want them to get into gaming this way, expect not to be playing the game the way you play it. You're going to be sitting around. You're going to be going at their pace to do that.
I think it's a great topic we should cover. We should make a header for that and kind of go through. Because co-op games are probably one of the best way to get people into some games. Like some people can just, you'll introduce them in person a couple minutes and they'll take it up from there. But I think for a lot of people, it's a lot better, especially it's something nice if it's someone, say a family member or like a partner. It's something you guys can then do together. It's a nice thing to do with friends and family. And I enjoy playing video games with the people I know. And some of them never played a game before. And it's like, hey, I can show you how to play this, but it's kind of a hard expectation for them to, pick it up and learn it on their own. And then now we can play together. Whereas we can, both jump in it together. I can kind of show them the ropes, but there are some really kind of important things which Dave will bring up on it that we need to cover is some kind of pitfalls and things to avoid when showing or playing co-op with someone. And like they said, is be sure to have patience while they're learning and try not to backseat game, as it's called. This is very common. I'm bad for this too sometimes. You're playing with someone, especially this is why like Portal 2 is a really good game to play co-op, but a lot of the game is you're waiting for your partner to do something and you're just sitting there with like a bated breath trying not to just play the game for them, because it's really easy just to say, hey, do this, and not let them figure it out. But you have to make sure have the patience, as well as you're playing games that have like a fail mechanic. Let's say if you're playing like Killing Floor or playing something else where if they don't hold up their end, you can all fail. You're going to have to expect that that's going to happen, as well as make sure to not get mad at them or even just encourage them when things fail. Like failing isn't a bad thing. It's part of just the learning. Oh, dang, we died, but we're going to get them next time. How can we improve on this? Another thing to be aware of on top of that with kind of those Killing Floor co-op games is that chances are you will outskill them quite a bit. And you probably shouldn't play at your full level, but you also shouldn't patronize the partner too as much either. Because what's going to happen if you play at your full level, let's say if you're playing Killing Floor, it's just the two of you, you're going to have like 50 plus kills, and they're probably going to have like 2 or 3, because by the time they can do anything, you've already kind of mopped up the room with everything, which they don't really feel like they're contributing. It's not really that fun. We've all kind of been there when we're playing a co-op game and everyone's just kind of stomping stuff around you. But it's also kind of annoying if, it's not really fun for you either to just, let them or wait or, like artificially kind of dumb yourself down to their level, because then they kind of feel like they feel bad that you're, not going to have as much fun. They kind of feel a lot of pressure to, like step up and be better. So a good way to kind of go around that as well is to maybe like add little kind of handicaps to yourself, basically they're not aware of. Like maybe go for skill shots only. If it's like Killing Floor or shooter game, maybe go for like, I'm going to do only headshots, or I'm going to use this new play style or new loadout that I'm not used to. So it's completely new to me too. So we're both kind of learning, and it kind of puts you down a little bit to their level without having to, like I said, kind of patronize them level. And another thing you can do is kind of just put yourself in a state that maybe your reaction times aren't as good. Maybe not try, like it's easier, like maybe not try so hard, but if you're a bit older, then you can do things that slow down your reaction time. You can still have, make the game fun, and still makes the co-op experience good. And next thing you know, you're not going to be getting a million headshots each time, but you can, both parties can still enjoy the experience.
Dabs.
The main thing is,
he's talking about dabs.
To remain, you're supposed to be having fun, so don't get frustrated, and also don't have expectations for your partner. This isn't something that, in a week they'll be great and we'll both be like, like stomping this game together. It's like, you have to understand, like they're gonna be learning and stuff too. So just try to have the experience itself as fun, and not have expectations or goals set for like what skill level they're going to have, because everyone learns differently. And that's probably one of the more important things is don't backseat game, have patience, and just make sure that both of you are having fun.
Yep, and one of the techniques that you spoke about specifically being like, okay, I'm only going to kill with headshots. That's the only thing I'm going to kill with, was one of the techniques that I used to help some of my friends get into specifically Payday 2. Like, they had never played a bunch of shooters before. I played a lot of shooters, but I sold them on this concept of, hey, you want to play this game where we get together as a team and we do try and pull off this bank heist? And they go, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. But there is a fair amount of mechanical skill to a game like Payday. So you do need to say, I need to have some way to put myself at a similar level to them. I need to be able to give us both an enjoyable experience without just basically sitting around and waiting, because that's not fun for me, and they will be able to tell that that's not fun for me. So, body shots only, or headshots only, or specifically one weapon and that's the only thing you can use, or go in with, some other restriction on yourself. And that can be a great way to deal with a differing skill level.
And then there's when he started playing FPS with me, and he just started mopping everything up until I got good enough to keep up.
Yeah, you'd played enough games before. You know how FPS work.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid that you were just never going to stop playing. But I mean, it was because we used to play StarCraft, and I mean, you did the same thing to me at RTS. I did to you at FPS, so it was just one of those. I could finally get my revenge. Jesus Farter brought up something. He says when he's playing Smash with some people, I have to handicap myself with certain players so it isn't unfair to them, and that's a very good point. Fighting games are notorious for this too, because a lot of people who love fighting games want to get their friends into it. But chances are, if you're playing like Street Fighter or even Smash Bros, it's very hard to, hey, let's play this 1v1 game, and I'm just gonna, beat the shit out of you forever, and I'll be having fun, but you're not, and like it's really hard. But what you can do with these games is there's a lot of characters that are very different that you're not going to know anything about, and you can just hop on those. And then once they kind of learn the ropes, you just it kind of works for both parties. You're learning something new, and they get to verse you and not feel like you're handicapping or babying, or like it can be really obvious in like Smash Bros when all of a sudden you stop attacking them all the time, or you're kind of just waiting, or you'll stop blocking, or you'll just let them get that killing hit. But if you're playing a character that you're completely unfamiliar with, that's just going to start happening more natural, and it's going to be a more natural experience for both parties.
Putting both parties into a learning experience is very valuable. You're muted, Deus.
Thank you. I was coughing my lungs out there and I muted myself. Yeah, I wanted to touch on the damn it. Muting myself.
No, it's gone.
Yeah, it vanished. It vanished. It's done. What were you just talking about? Because it was what we were just talking about.
Putting yourself into a learning situation. Just
yeah.
Playing the game.
When Suda was talking about letting them hit you and like stopping blocking and stuff like that, that's not a beneficial thing to helping somebody get into games or learn games. Nobody wants to win because they were let win, and it doesn't help you learn the game to just let easy hits in. It's definitely more beneficial to put yourself into a state where you can give some effort and they can still respond. I think starting with co-op might be the best beginning, honestly, rather than competitive.
When you're both in a learning experience. Like you spoke to when we were playing Borderlands recently, and you were just getting back into FPS after a long time. That can also be pretty intimidating. Luckily, I know you. I know you played a lot of video games, and you're the kind of person who's like, fuck, he's killing so many more things than me. I gotta kill more things.
Yep, I did get much better from that. I ended up getting a weapon that one-shots things, and then I was doing the killing.
I was like, oh, now he's killing things. I gotta kill more things.
That was a good feeling. I liked that feeling. One of the games Pookie and I recently started playing, which I found really, really interesting, and I could see some newer people getting into, is Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. That got Suda's attention. He's like, what? Yeah.
It is. If no one's seen it, you're basically just in a spaceship, and there's multiple roles. And I believe there's more roles than there are players, so you do have to run around. And basically, someone's piloting it, someone's shooting things, and then there's, I can't remember the roles, but it's one of those things where it's co-op, so you're versing the elements, and it's just it is pretty fun.
At most,
it can get a bit stressful.
At most, there's 4 people. That's the most you can have on the ship. There's at least 7 different buttons to hit on the ship. With 2 people, it was really interesting. we look forward to getting to do it 4. Hey, Mr. Tube, how you doing? Welcome. But I mean, all the buttons are simple. They're all super, super, super simple. The shield is just you use the analog stick to move the shield around the ship, and you try to have the shield there when things hit it. That's it. You use the
Not
D-pad to
terribly
run up to it.
complicated.
You hit one button to activate it, and you use the analog stick to move it. And every weapon is the same. You've got a top gun, a bottom gun, a left gun, a right gun. So depending on where things are on the screen, you have to have people on different guns. So you've got, people moving all over the place, manning different weapons, manning the shield to move the shield into different spots. Then there's a pilot, which can move the engine around and power the engine. There's a special weapon that somebody can run up and hit, and it just like fires off in all directions. Then there's something else. I can't remember what it is. No. 5, 6, no, that's 7. Yeah, that's 7. Okay. That's what you do in the game. We look forward to playing with more. And it's literally just a 2D view. Up, down, left, right. Move little figure around. Hit button. Control was very, very good. Very, very reasonable. You don't have to be exactly in the right pixel. You can be within the right space and then end up going down the ladder. Be in the right area and hit the button, and you'll go over to the console and use it. And I liked that game. And it's all co-op. So just don't be salty with the people. And some jobs are harder than others. Like piloting is a difficult job, but you can just put them on one gun and be like, okay, this is your gun. Look in this little scope, and anything that comes there, you fucking kill it. That's your job. You got one job. That was how me and her balanced.
As long as you then don't go, you had one job.
Yeah, don't do that, because it's not easy. They're going to have to be aiming a gun on all sorts of degrees, but that was how I balanced the game with her. Okay, you have one job, maybe 2. You do these 2 things. You're getting good. You have to man these 2 stations now, and I'm going to do those 5. Okay? I'm managing 5 things. You have to manage 2. We can manage different skill levels by giving different task loads, basically. And it worked very, very well that way. And we had a fantastic time with both of us trying and overcoming a task with both of us giving full effort. So I strongly recommend that one as well. Do we want to maybe first? Yeah, even first. For multiplayer first, I would say it. Have you played much of it, Pseudo?
No, not too much. But yeah, it's one of those things it's one of those games you have to make sure that you don't backseat game too much and you don't get frustrated at your partner. And it's all easiest for us to say that, but when we're actually playing, you'd be surprised at you're so used to, especially if you played multiplayer games before, you're very used to having teammates that will respond well to what you say and criticisms and stuff. And even if they're not negative criticism, you still have to aware that any criticism for a new player probably won't be taken positively. It'll sound like you're, at least with a lot of new players, especially with partners, there can be a bit of anxiety and a bit of I don't want to upset my partner. I don't want to disappoint them. I want to be able to, I wish I could just do this. And if they start saying a bunch of criticisms, hey, do this, oh, hey, do this, they can get overwhelmed, and they can feel hey, this is too much for me. I'm sorry, I don't want to take away from your fun. But
100%. It's something that both parties are going to have to work on. I liked this game for that because I could not pay attention to what she was doing. I didn't have the attention span to do my 5 jobs and watch her 2 jobs. I was fully focused on my 5 jobs and just hoping that her jobs were done. But I was still the captain. So while I was piloting, I would call out, we're going to need the bottom gun. We're going to need the top gun. And then she would be the one to respond, because I knew where our plot was, so I could give her forewarning, hey, you put the shield at the top. And just let her do it. So it's not necessarily backseating, but you can still work as the coordinator for the team, because you do need to work as a team in that game. And then they don't even necessarily have to compute all the tasks that are going on. They can focus on the mechanical skill of performing a specific task. There's that aspect as well to it. So yeah, don't criticize. don't get upset when people fail, because you're going to fail eventually in the game, and it's probably them that are going to fail first. They should. You've got years of experience on them if you're playing with them. A big chunk of people getting into games is definitely the person playing with them having the right attitude to allow them to learn and get into it. I agree. We should definitely focus some on that.
We are just about out of time, though.
We are.
And I feel like we need to give out some free video games that people can use to help bring other people into playing video games.
Maybe. Hopefully. There'll be games that would be good for that, but I'm not sure. We do have a lot of interest, like Indigo Prophecy, maybe not the best one to start with.
Maybe not great for introducing people.
What the fuck is this? This is video games? But what's happening?
It's a video game.
You don't want that to be the ambassador for games or anything. Oops. All right, let me get my random generator up. Oh, hey, the collections are still up. All the old data is still there when I brought the page up. Thank you, cookies. So handy.
I like cookies.
Me too. All right, let me just grab a list of people to put in this here thing. You know, I didn't really think of Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time until the very end, but the more I thought of it, the more it became like one of the perfect games to really introduce people. You use a D-pad and one button, and then an analog stick. That's it. It's super simple controls. But you're holding the controller, so it's good.
After looking through the varieties of games in my libraries, not good for starting out. This is not what I am attracted to in a video game.
Yeah, I don't have a ton that are great for that either. Unfortunately. Except for, okay. Extra list is done. Just grab this now. We still have a bunch of unclaimed ones as well. The list is below. In the information right below the actor stream right now. If you happen to know any of those people, you should probably poke them and be like, yo, you guys want to give you a free game. Even if you don't want it. You should go get it and give it to somebody else.
Free game.
And the first name. I'm ready for it. Hey, I've seen this name once already. It's almost like the list is not that big and we've got a lot of games to give away.
Another game for GlenCon. And I will ping him in the game giveaway Discord channel You won another game.
It's almost a meme prize. I hope he's a fan of it. I hope he plays it. Play the golf club. Do it. I want to know how the golf club 2019 is. We need a review. And one of our new gift sub members, Mr. Ross CKS. I think he's probably asleep right now, but I'll do my best to get in touch with him. I'm not sure he's on Discord. Has gotten a copy of Magicka.
That is a game.
It's not a good sign when that's all you can say about it.
Well, it is though. It's fun. It is a fun game.
Okay, well, you didn't say fun game. You just said it's a game.
You can also grief the hell out of whoever you're playing with.
And somebody else won a game.
It's bored.
I wonder if I'll be able to find him. Oh! Isn't this what we were just talking about?
That's a really good one.
You've got some puzzles to solve, my friend. 1, 2, 3. Let's do 4.
We've done 3 so far.
We can do 4. We could probably do more.
You won a free game. You won the Golf Club 2019.
Yeah, you missed everything. Pookie's right.
You missed the show.
And the final name.
Ooh, Nariel. Nariel, you won a game.
Yay! What did I win?
That's actually interesting. That's actually interesting. I think you might actually even enjoy it.
Oh, you won Lego Batman, the third one. The Lego games are actually sick. Like they're actually super good.
Lego actually makes some really cool games. I think you might actually enjoy that. Definitely do check that one out.
Those are also really good games to get new players into as well. Lego games are very casual and usually are tied to an IP that someone would probably want to play. So if someone's like a Harry Potter fan, you can play through the Lego Harry Potter games, and they're fun little co-op games.
Yep, they're made to be very accessible. Yeah,
they're
done.
Good. They're good games.
They put some thought into them. They're not just mindless. They're good, well thought out, well constructed games. So, I hope you all enjoy. You loved the Harry Potter Lego games. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I know you're a big HP fan. Harry Potter. You're a big Harry Potter fan. I will refuse to call Harry Potter HP because HP is something completely different that predates Harry Potter in the literary world by a great deal. I'm looking for the requirements to the witness, and I'm glad my potato should run it. Yep. We ran it on Pookie's laptop. She didn't play it on my desktop, and it ran quite well. So...
Someone should really 3D print a computer case in the shape of a potato.
Yeah, just go ahead and give it to anybody you want, Glenn Cohn.
That's the thing.
It definitely has to exist.
Or give it out to or give it to somebody in your family that likes golfing and doesn't play a lot of games while they're stuck inside bored. If you know anybody like that. That seems like a good way to get people into games as well. We didn't talk about that, but sports games for the sports people is a very, very short hop.
Just not like the mainline FIFA, NBA games, because those aren't actually sports games anymore. Those are casinos with sports games tacked on. Yep. Your stuff is in the list board. We just haven't pulled any of those ones yet.
I don't know about WWE 2K20. I don't like the 2K series games.
It is hilariously bad. Oh my God.
I assume it's a Gong Show because it's a 2K game.
Also, I like how people write 2K20, even though K and 0 is the same amount of characters.
Yep.
It was notorious for being unplayable. Yeah, but I also said sports.
Yeah,
that's not a sport.
I don't know, man.
It's an athletic act.
Opera.
It's an athletic act.
It's stunts and parkour sports, because I mean,
no. Well, depends. This one's more scripted than most, right?
yeah, I don't know. I'd still say it's
an athletic act. It's like a stunt double. It's not a sport. You're doing stunts for movies, right?
But
it still requires a certain level of athleticism. I'm not taking anything away from what they do. It's impressive. I don't like to watch it per se. I did like to watch the Hardy brothers back in the day, because they would do like triple backflips off the top rope onto people and crazy stuff like that. That was cool.
My point was just being that when it is in game form, it's no longer the type of soap opera. It is actually, more closer to actual fighting with the UFC games, and I'd call those sports as well. But it's a weird gray area of
it's interesting how it goes from an act to a sport when it becomes a game. Hey, Raven.
All right.
Yep, I think that
Raven,
wraps her up.
We're just wrapping up.
But I will be back later. Absolutely.
I'm gonna see if I can get Nariel playing some Lego Batman.
Yeah. That sounds great. I want to hear about that and enjoy your golf, Glenn. Phantasy Star 4, like I said I would be. I'm totally down to grind out some Phantasy Star. I gotta gain a couple levels and beat Leshrac, and then we can come back for the tower, and then we gotta go back to First City and do the cave. Yeah, we're at the good parts right now. Yep, I set it up so that when people say my name, I'll get alerted to it, and I know to check out chat. It's my attempt to keep on top of you animals.
Or be paying attention when somebody wants to talk to him. One or the other.
Yeah, stuff like that. It also works with GamesByDesign. Just because I don't expect everyone to know.
Don't abuse it.
Yep. Well, I've actually set it up so that each person can only trigger it every so often, because I know how to do stuff like that. So I let it moderate itself for the most part. I like golf games, but that golf game might be a bit much for my potato. Yeah. Spamming free, hopefully. But if it gets abused too much, I can always make changes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope this helps someone. You know what? If this ever helps one person get into gaming, please tell me, and I'll be happy. That'd be the entire purpose of this thing being completed. Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
So, I'll see you in a little bit, but until then, have yourselves a fantastic Saturday afternoon. I'm Deus.
I'm Pseudo.
And I'm Rage.
May all your shots be headshots.